All right, here we are. Another week around the trash fire with your host Matthias, along with the boys
John.
And well,
and Will. Well, not much happened over this week in terms of news-wise, though. I am surprised that 3.0 is still on sale.
that is an interesting topic. Worthy of some discussion at some point as to why that is and like what went down over the weekend. But I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yes, you could probably get to that in the hobby rant section, but since there's not much news to discuss, we can just jump right into this. So, quickly go over this. The grand reveal of Warhammer Plus, only 2 days away. Not much to talk about, honestly.
In the vein of Warhammer Plus, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors and promises and anticipation, and not a whole lot to actually chew on.
Well, if I recall, this isn't the actual release date, right? This is
This is
just where they're
another
just gonna
trailer.
say more
I
stuff
think
about it.
they might reveal the price point.
Oh yeah, they're
Yeah,
gonna release the price point because it's I don't know exactly when. I know it's early July, right? Is when it's being released because that's when the Blood Angel one is gonna be released.
yeah. They might tell us what the exact scope of this project is going to be.
Right. So again, not much to know. All we're gonna probably know is probably a couple more shows to fill out the roster because I think they announced a few. So they announced 12 or 9 shows last time we talked about this.
Yeah,
Somewhere around
and
there.
they're also announcing more than shows, so yeah, it's I'm kind of curious what else it's going to be like besides shows because they're implying it's just going to be more than that. So maybe like battle reports, painting tutorials. I don't know.
You think they're just gonna throw all their like YouTube videos up there?
Everything that's a video, I could see them putting on there. Though they probably won't want to constrain, particularly if it's a subscription service. They're not going to want to constrain everything to be there because like those painting videos are vital. I mean, one of the most watched painting videos of like any miniature on the history of YouTube is the Archeon video they have, which has something like 1 million views, which tells you how small the hobby actually is. But like they're gonna have to keep some of that stuff, available for everybody. But maybe
Yeah,
if they're gonna do more advanced or more specific tutorials, that's where they could put them.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. They might have like the basic stuff like how to paint the minion, how to paint the stormcast or the orcs, but have something like I mean, I'm sure they're going to release like a new monster for both factions. Maybe have that be a Warhammer Plus exclusive. Like sad to say, but I could see them doing something like the Archeon video here. Like if they're going to do another one for again a newer model of that detail, I could see them putting that on Warhammer Plus. Which, to be honest, if you look at a lot of other painting YouTube channels like Next Level Painting, um, or like can't name others top of my head, but a lot of
I
their really fancy stuff is Patreon only. Like the Legend
I
Studio.
pay for Duncan Rhodes's painting academy as well, and same thing. Like he's putting up a Kragnos video in 2 weeks, and like he's got one on Bellicor and like Lord Croak and all these like very specific things, and like that makes sense
Are those
to put.
paywall locked?
What'd you say?
Are those paywall locked?
Some of them are.
Which makes sense, I mean, you don't do this for free, right?
Yeah, it's true. That's a viewpoint perhaps not shared by everybody in the hobby, but yeah, you would
Right.
you don't want to work for peanuts.
I don't know. I don't. I don't think it's gonna be anything like that. The painting videos is, well, my opinion. I think should just be out there on YouTube because they get a lot of views. I mean, I use a lot of those painting videos to figure out stuff. But again, that's just my opinion.
Mhm.
I
And
don't I don't know what else it
obviously
would do.
free would be preferable. It's nice for the consumer, but I can see that happening. I guess is what I would say.
True. Uh, it makes me wonder if they're gonna going into what we'll talk about next. It makes me wonder if they're gonna be doing a lot of more, if they're gonna get involved in a lot more tournaments, and then having this be the place to live stream. They're right.
Yeah, you mean replacing the Twitch?
No. Cause the Twitch is more like I don't watch it other than the big announcements. It seems more like a just like a hang out with the hobby manager of the store while they talk Warhammer kind of stuff. This what I'm talking about is like popular esports and stuff. How they'll have they'll stream like a big tournament going on or in a big event kind of deal, and
I
it'll
guess
only be through Warhammer Plus.
that's an interesting idea. I mean, it's not even though it's not personally something that I usually would go looking for. Like, I can understand why they would do that.
I wouldn't be surprised if they paywall some battle reports, considering, and again, like other YouTube channels do that, right? I mean, Wargaming Vault is a thing, stuff like that.
Totally true.
So I think that's the obvious answer is having stuff like advanced paint tutorials and more battle reports.
Yeah.
The meme would be like tactics videos, because we all know those would be probably be garbage. um, but yeah, that's off the top of my head. If content that isn't just the animations would be stuff like that, hobby content.
Yeah, because when we first talked about this, we knew that the animations weren't enough to warrant a Warhammer Plus, considering you could probably finish everything in a day.
The out of left field hope for me, which is probably not going to happen, is it would be awesome if it was a resource for audiobooks and audio dramas.
Oh,
Like
that'd be
if you were subbed, you could just listen to those.
I It would be cool. I don't disagree with that, but I highly doubt they'd do something like that.
It would be very strange.
The problem. The thing with streaming services usually it's anim or moving pictures is what they're mainly going
Right.
for.
Yeah, it's some sort of a video. I'm just trying to like grasp at straws for like if they're gonna make a sub service that isn't just a couple of bucks. Like what they're gonna need a pretty deep library of stuff to justify its existence. And like those audiobooks and audio dramas, technically, those are thousands of hours of things that they could conceivably like put up there for people to like listen to while they paint. But yeah, it would be very strange. No doubt about that. But I'm just like wondering like what else, because they just don't have much of a video backlog aside from their tutorials.
I don't know. It's something we're gonna find out about on Wednesday.
Real soon.
Yeah. So they're obviously just gonna kick it off with the animations that they've been working on for the past year and a half now. 2 years? I don't know.
And maybe longer depending on negotiating some of the people who are attached to those projects.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have to just wait and see. But that's the animation news. And then I don't know if you guys saw this last week, but some model requirements at Warhammer World. And I would
Yeah,
assume this will be at Warhammer events as well.
It's a fun conversation.
Before I go over some stuff, did you guys happen to read this?
Yes, actually, I'm very into the discussions of this.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah, I heard about it too.
Would you like to kick it off, John, or shall I pick some stuff?
Pick some stuff, and I'll throw my hot take.
Okay. One that I'm not too thrilled
Games
about.
Workshop sucks, Matt, and then whatever they do.
Well, some things I wasn't too happy about is your army painted. So paint your painted army is not a problem, right? It's what you paint your army as. So example being my Craft World Eldar being BL10. Uh, seeing how, I mean, I would run them as BL10 just because I like aspect warriors. But if I wanted to run them Samhain, because they're not painted Samhain colors, I cannot run them as Samhain. They have to be BL10. So you can't uh, be flexible with your army, so you'd have to paint your army different colors in the detachments. And I believe somewhere in here it even states that different detachments have to be distinguished from one another. Um, I don't like this rule because I like to keep my army unified, keep the colors simple and all that. And I'm not. I don't like this rule just
So
because of that.
so it's funny. The reason I laugh when you mention that because I think this is the only rule that I personally think is kind of BS. Um, like the rest, like the 3D printed, the bit stuff, like to me that's banal. But it's kind of funny how like being in because the wargaming world is so big, like I can kind of see trends that we see in the real world in this little niche of a community. Like if you look at news cycles, right? Usually there's a big story, but then there's another important story that gets glossed over because it's not as exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And by that I mean most of the conversation regarding this packet is the 3D printed and the bits piece,
Right.
but people are forgetting about the painting thing, which I think is absolute bullcrap. Like, and I think that should be more of an outrage that because we always say like when you get a demo from Will, hey, you could paint your army anything, whatever you want. Well, if you paint Ultramarines, well, you gotta play Ultramarines. If you paint Black Templars, well, you gotta play Black Templars, which is just kind of lame. I think that rules shouldn't like be constrained with paint schemes. You also get the slippery slope of like, well, what if my BL10 scheme has a red gauntlet? Well, it's not BL10 anymore technically because
And then you could, in theory, paint for flexibility, paint for advantage of like, oh, actually, like my Ultramarines all have green boots. They're the sons of Ultramur, and they can be run as any chapter.
right.
Uh, this is a case of like I think most Warhammer people, Games Workshop employees included, would say that paint job is not a conversion, and thus really doesn't have much to do with WYSIWYG. Because really all it takes before a game is just to say, hey, this is what these guys are.
And
Um,
what's really funny too is like the confusion which this rule kind of stands by. If you play Ultramarines as Blood Angels, I might get confused. It kind of only matters for Space Marines and Chaos Marines. Like, all right, well, what if I'm playing Goths for my orcs? Do you know what the Goth color scheme is?
Black with
Black or
checkers.
checkers.
Damn it. Bad example. Okay, Maynarch Dynasty. Do you know what the color scheme for the Maynarch Dynasty is?
No idea.
Isn't it orange?
No, it's like some weird forge rule thing. Let's see, maybe I'm just shooting myself in the foot
There,
here.
well, there's a lot of, but you bring up a good example of a lot of the 40K ones. There's not many AOS forces that would apply to this. Even like for Slaves to Darkness for Chaos, like if you've got green Chaos Warriors, you know, are they Nurgle? What are they?
But yeah, it's just hard to really enforce color schemes, like
They can at Warhammer World. They have the muscle to do that.
right, right.
Don't imagine this would trickle down anywhere else. It would be uh, quite quite a big surprise if this was something that was enforced at tournaments that were outside of the boundaries of Warhammer World.
Mm-hmm.
So I see this being enforced in the road shows. I mean, I think those are going to be disasters anyway for other reasons, but like I could see that happening. But yeah, to honestly, if it's like this in Warhammer World and an event, fine with that. It's Warhammer World, like Will said, they have the clout to do that, especially if they play at a narrative event.
Mhm.
Probably, come up with like usually for my group, we try to come up for fluff reasons why certain color schemes, like why we use certain chapter tactics. Like, I played Deathwing 30k themed Bloody Dark Angels in 40k, and I use the White Scars rules because I think that represents their kind of shock assault tactics. Now to be fair, I'm doing a 30k scheme, so it's not technically Dark Angels, but I had to me, even just for myself, I have to justify it to myself. But yeah, Warhammer World, whatever. Again, I don't like this rule, but if it's only in Warhammer World, I don't see it being much of a big issue. Like whatever, you know.
I
This
don't
has
know.
also been a thing at Warhammer World before. Unless my memory is totally faulty, like I remember people talking about this like years back
Oh
online.
yeah, yeah. We
That
were
this
reading this a while ago.
yeah, this is mostly this is just reinforcement of their stringent rules, and like the argument for this rule is a pretty weak one, but it's just that that this is sort of like um this is the pinnacle of Warhammer. At least it's like supposed to be. They have the craziest looking tables. Like, they've got the museum right
No,
there. Like, they want their stuff to be painted, so if people are walking by, they're seeing what is you know played to and painted to fidelity of like what the Warhammer hobby is like supposed to be in Warhammer World's eyes. Which is why I don't even see this happening at like other official events. Just because it would first of all pretty drastically reduce the number of people who would come. Like someone playing in like a roadshow tournament like is not going to want to repaint their army for this reason. And I think this my hope and my thought is that this is going to stay Warhammer World, because it's also just too hard to deal with for anybody who doesn't have that many people who can go around and say, hey, like, what are they going to do? Tell you to leave, which they could do, but it just seems unlikely that this would cause as much as much chaos in practice.
Um, two things to respond to that because those are good points. I think that's the second thing I'll address later, the enforcement thing. But one thing I do want to touch on is I don't know if, I think it's here where like each detachment should be different colors. Now, on one hand, like I think that you must use Ultramarines as Ultramarines is lame. But I think if your entire army is painted the same Ultramarines, right? For example, and you have two patrol detachments, one of which is using the Iron Hands rules, and the other is using the Salamanders rules. I think they should be easily distinguishable in an event. Like if I'm playing Matt or Will and you guys do that, I'm fine because I know you guys aren't gonna like BS me. But I could easily see some people like saying, "Oh, this is an Iron Hands unit," and I get the feel not pain. Oh, by the way, it's I'm gonna shoot you. Oh, they're Salamanders. I'm gonna get the reroll. Even mistakenly, like I don't even think like most people are gonna do that out of malice. I think people will just might just forget if your entire army looks the same, and then you're adding another layer of like, okay, these guys are using these chapter tactics, and these guys using different chapter tactics or craft world rules or hive fleet rules or whatever. It's another layer of there could be mistakes and feels bad moments. So I am a proponent of I mean, if I'm running an event personally, I would probably require like different paint schemes for different parts of your army, if possible. Like possible, I would want that. Just to again, if it's all randoms at this tournament, it would just make it easier. But if I'm playing with friends, I wouldn't mind if like again your Ultramarines are different chapters, painted all the same, whatever. I mean, I'll probably forget anyway because it's 40k, but there's less feels bad moments there. How do you guys feel about that? About requiring different chapter rules to reflect different paint schemes.
Well, kind of like what Matt said, quite a few podcasts back when we were talking about whether you should paint your army. Like it's makes things clear in game. Like it's more it helps for clarity when that stuff is painted. Like if you had things that are two different Space Marine chapters, right, and it would be rule functionally different. Like yeah, you probably want to make them pretty distinct. Aside from just like a tiny, easily missable marking on like a leg.
I agree. I think, uh, you know, this is more on Space Marines, though. I mean, it does apply to other armies, but being different chapters, you should be different color schemes to represent, that they're different and they have different rules and all that other stuff. The problem is, it's at least in my like 20 years of playing this game, that's too much, like 15 years. It's never been encouraged to paint different detachments, different things and whatnot. It's always been get your army unified so it looks nice. Don't throw in a bunch of random color schemes in there, because then it's like, did you paint that or are you just borrowing a friend's model here? Kind of deal. Because that's LVO is kind of a joke when it comes to this, but you know, you'd see armies at the LVO with two different color schemes and obviously two different paint styles, and you can tell that that guy didn't paint it and whatnot. That guy obviously borrowed it from a friend or someone else painted it, kind of thing, right?
Right.
So, and GW's never encouraged painting your armies different craft worlds chapters kind of deal. They have always promoted paint it unified. So it's weird that they're now pushing to paint different chapters if you're using different detachments and kind of things. Again, it's a good thing, right? Because, I want to know who's Salamanders, who's Black Templar, who's Ultramarines, blah, 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 blah. But they just never encouraged anything like that before.
And specifically, all of this is for organized play.
Yes.
So, like, probably on your average, beer and pretzels day at Warhammer World, this would not be a thing.
Mm. So I don't know if I answered John's question, but that's
No, you did. Yeah, definitely.
what I was going for.
So,
Yeah. And then
oh, go ahead.
as John pointed out, there's also the 3D printed stuff that they mentioned as well. I don't know if you had any. Did you have any more you want to add to that painting topic?
Yeah, I think we're in agreement with the painting thing. You know,
Okay.
kind of lame, but only in Warhammer World. The 3D printed thing. Oh my god, this is hitting the internet right now.
This one I don't have too much of a problem with. Yeah, it does suck that I can't use my sometimes better 3D printed stuff. Rip my dreadnoughts from Russia, but it's not too much of a big deal. But I also have the privilege of never attending a Warhammer event, really, because everything I go to is just third-party tournaments. So they don't really care if you're using 3D models as long as it's represented, as long as what it is looks close enough to what you're using it for. But it would suck to have a model that you paid for just get removed because it's not Citadel. It's not 100% Citadel model, so it's gotta go.
I mean, this part to me is I have not too much of a problem because it's pretty standard practice. Like, I played competitive. Well, not played. I played competitive Star Wars Legion, and I played competitive War Machine, and I think Will could speak for this as well as that. That's the same rule. Your model has to be majority privateer press. I
It's
mean,
no
for
surprise.
Legion, your model has to be. If you go to like a big event, they expect you to have the real models. Like I have a ton of 3D printed clone troopers, and of course I can't use them if I go to LVO. Like it's not FFG.
Yeah.
Now the other conversation is the bits part, and I think this is where GW I think differs from other companies is that they're not allowing third party bits. I don't know. I mean, I think this leads to the conversation of enforcement of like, are they really gonna pull your minis? Like because the helmet is 3D printed.
I think the thing
Mm.
is people probably would. This is more of a deterrent to do that.
Yeah.
Also, something I actually liked about it is they said, if you really did make it yourself, it's no different from green stuff.
Yeah. So they allow 3D printed, but they don't allow 3D printed. As long as as long as you can somehow prove that you made it
Yeah,
and didn't buy it.
which is fascinating because then because it says, if you've gone to the effort of design, this is hardly a legal binding document. So, but if you're following the letter of the law here, it says much like hand sculpted detail, if you've gone to the effort of designing and printing your own bespoke parts of your army, these parts are permitted at our events. So, parts for your army is not saying specific pieces on a miniature. So, like, if you want to make potato men for your Gloomspite army, and you have a unit of potato men, and you're running them as stabas, and you made those potato men, and you know if I guess assume they look kind of good and they're painted in the correct chapter of Gloomspite, then this is
Yeah.
permissible.
No, the language is pretty damning. They say like commercially available third-party printed parts are not permitted. Please bear in mind if you do spot it, we will ask you to prove them and may ask for them to be removed if there's any doubt. Like I don't think they're gonna do that, man. Like I really maybe in Warhammer World, but if they expand this to like like the road shows, I don't think they're gonna enforce that. That's a PR nightmare.
If it's different if it's like a whole model
Yes, if it's a whole model,
that they would
yeah,
enforce.
that would
Otherwise, they would not be bothered. But they do have to say up front, hey, we don't want you to do that.
Well,
Uh,
they cover
that's
themselves here with a uh, email them if you have any questions about model being pulled or whatnot.
now something interesting too that people have mentioned, like like I agree that it's probably not going to matter. Like if us three, go in with our 3D printed helmets for our Marines or whatever, we'll be fine. But in the unlikely event that one of us gets to top tables, that might be an issue because then it's streamed. It's like the finals, right? Especially if it's gonna be in Warhammer Plus, like we're predicting, like that might be awkward. Like
yeah.
Pop Up the Monkeys 3D helmets or Liber Demonica's 3D arms are on stream.
Same
That
thing with
that gets
anyone
dicey.
who
What's
does a
up?
version or a proxy. Like what you're saying, like the pop goes the monkey things. Like you would have to, you'd have to check. Like just the sensible thing to do. Just
Right.
ask the TO. Like then it's no issue.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
the only thing you'd have to do is you just have to send them an email, a picture of it, and be like, "Is this gonna be okay?" Kind of deal.
Because then
Uh,
if it is an issue, you can do something.
but yeah, I mean, I know because this is kind of like what's happening in the Warhammer stores pre-pandemic, right? I know uh, Will can probably confirm this. You weren't allowed to put pictures up if the model obviously wasn't a GW product, right? On the
Uh,
Facebook.
that and I mean, on occasion we did, usually not for a game in progress. But I believe both John and myself have, had people be like, "Hey, we it's GW stuff only here. Like you can't put it on the table." Very rarely you have to tell somebody to remove something, unless it's inappropriate.
Right.
They actually mention in this document as well about the clause with real military units or political movements in existence after 1900.
Hmm.
wait, really? I didn't see that part. That's awesome.
So it says, in addition to the above, we ask for any models of iconography that represent real military units or political movements in existence after 1900 or adult themed content to be removed immediately.
The 1900. That's awesome. Oh, I see it. That's really funny.
Which page is
Um,
this?
Page 3, the very last sentence. It's kind of funny because like I was reading the privateer press documents, and that one has something similar, but that one says like, please do not have anything that represents copyrighted material. So if you have like a Sigma army painted like Captain America with a cap star, not allowed. If you had Dallas Cowboys painted like Gatorman, and you got your fall like Gator um Gatorman Warlock with the Dallas Cowboys logo on his hide. Nope, can't bring that.
Hmm.
Which is this is kind of funny. So again, it's industry standard practice, right?
Yeah.
I do want to mention that a lot of the outrage on the internet with this is the whole like, oh, Games Workshop is scared of 3D printing. I really don't think Games Workshop is scared of 3D printing, and I I'm part of a community-owned 3D printer, and it's really hard to 3D print. So I just want to tell our listeners that people who are like any listeners who think that 3D printing is going to kill Games Workshop soon, I really don't think so. In fact, I did a lot of surveys on some different Facebook groups of like, why don't you have a 3D printer? And a lot of the one of the more common responses is just like, it's just another hobby. So, we could dive into that at another episode, but no. uh, we're not at the point where you could buy a 3D printer, hook it up within 30 minutes, and then print Space Marines. That doesn't work like that. So,
Not yet.
um,
Not yet.
not yeah, none. Again, we could do a whole new episode. There's just a lot of. I was just trying to like formulate ways in my head of like how 3D printing can defeat Games Workshop, and it's really hard because it just goes back to people are very lazy and refuse to like do any sort of work besides buy money and models there or spend money and models there. But
Yeah,
but
that's a
yeah, I
discussion
think
for
this
the
is just
future.
yeah. I think this is just more of like a commercial advertising thing of like if you're gonna stream, if you have an official event, we want official models as opposed to like we're scared of the competition type of deal. Because again, this is pretty standard practice. Excuse me, from many other miniature war games of use the official model or as much of the official model as possible.
Yeah. Well, should we put a kibosh on this? Get our final thoughts on this article or
Uh,
rules, I should say.
it's as far as I know, it's only gonna matter for Warhammer World, regardless of how we feel about it, and maybe the road shows. But again, I think those are gonna be disasters for other reasons that have nothing to do with this. But I don't think it's gonna affect stuff like LVO or Nova or Adepticon. So
Yeah, well, those aren't GW event sponsored
exactly,
events, so that's
exactly.
the only thing that
There-
saves it.
There's certain elements from this, like the no proxies thing. I could see coming up in other places, but I would be if this document has any power over anything outside of Warhammer World, it would be newsworthy. At least I would be surprised.
Well, I mean, it's just a little hard to say, right? Because this, I mean, at least our local Warhammer store isn't even completely fully open, right? We can only just still buy stuff. Can't actually go in and play anything or whatnot. So even then, I don't think the rules would be enforced too harshly, and especially if they're
Yeah,
trying to get people in.
Yeah, simply not Warhammer World. You know.
Yeah, Warhammer World too big, but yeah, I don't really have a problem with any of this because I don't play in any Warhammer events, really. So the only one I took issue was with the painting restriction. I thought that was the most unreasonable thing.
yeah. I hope that stays in narrative events only
Yeah.
in Warhammer World.
Any final thoughts from you, Will? Or
I mostly in line with the same big things. I think that faction sub faction specific painting rule is pretty draconian. Though in narrative events and like for the Horus Heresy, it's something that was going to be at like a big event and was going to be streamed or something. There's a conversation to be had there. But again, it's nice that even for Warhammer World, it says this is for organized play, not for your typical Sunday.
yes.
It is
Well,
funny mentioning that because if I play a Sunday game of Warhammer and someone brings Ultramarines of 30k, I mean, oh, you damn right, I'm making them play them as Ultramarines. They're not going to be Black Shields or like Salamanders. No, they're Ultramarines. But that's because it's 30k.
to each their own, I guess. Well, some exciting news for me. Necromunda. We got more Necromunda. More Redemptionists.
Oh, it's so wacky. I love it.
Yeah, we getting him.
This man is a dead ringer for the narrator from Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I'm about it.
um,
So great.
I'm excited because it's more stuff to add to my Redemptionist, which I'm happy about. Um, put in that meme, these are my Redemptionists if I ever had one. I still haven't got my Redemptionists. I don't know what happened. They somehow got lost in the mail, and I had them mailed to my local Warhammer store. I got my Deepkin. What's this game called? Underworlds team.
All
But
crab
I
dust.
yeah, I got Lord Crab, but I didn't get my redemptionists. It was quite sad. I don't know what happened.
It's okay. I'm also waiting for a bunch of stuff I ordered from the web store, but the, I hope this is plastic, and it could very well be considering Cal Jericho and Scabs are plastic.
Yeah, I'd hope so too. Be a nice model to add to my collection. And then we got this little
That is a vile
I don't know
creature,
what this
and it
is.
is such a great sculpt. Like that is not something I would want to own at or think about or look at in any context. But like, what a good argument for why like the Necromunda setting has like been great for just like these sort of less talked about corners of the setting.
Deacon Malikev. That's this
Deacon
guy's
Malik,
name.
It's funny because like some of the 30K, there's a thread in the 30K Facebook group about like, oh, do you think this guy will be good as like a remembrancer? And everyone's like, you're crazy.
yeah, I don't know what books they're reading. This is just not even close, baby.
uh, he's not as bad as a lump of flesh on on
The lump of flesh guy is not well sculpted. This dude, I think, is well executed. Um,
he's
but
plastic.
he's definitely it's not 30K at all.
Well,
But it's very cool.
I'm excited. I'm excited to add him to my retinue whenever he comes out.
I think if you replace the head with something less realistic, he'd be kind of cool.
That's why it works, though. That's why it's like trying to capture those, fourth edition, margin illustrations that are so like horrific and evocative. Where like men are worse than goblins. Um, I think it works for that reason. Not something I would ever want to own, but like it's cool.
I like
They
it.
they're pushing the boundaries of stuff that usually was just in background art that now can be on the table.
Hey, whatever, add more stuff. Keep the game going. Keep the game thriving. That's
Oh
all.
yeah,
That's all we care about.
that's
Necromunda has not been forgotten. This is a game that continues to get support.
Even if it's just like 3 models, which we could be talking about in our next preview here. The Sunday preview, which is just gonna be what's gonna be pre-ordered this week. Still AOS, Dominion, still on sale.
Hmm.
Impressive. We all said that was gonna be gone in like 5 to 35 minutes.
There's a conversation there if you want to do it now or later, but
Uh,
it's quite
let's
interesting.
let's do it after the Sunday preview because there's not much to talk about here. Speaking of which, Blood Bowl. You just skip over that. Okay, and then more
I-
Necromunda.
before we skip it, these blood guys, I build the vampire guys. I was building the blood knights, and there's definitely some cues from the armor here, which is very interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
it's very much 1992's like Bram Stoker's Dracula with like the muscle sort of sculpted onto the armor and the helmets. Like it is totally the Gary Oldman Dracula,
yep.
which makes sense considering when these minis came out.
Yeah.
All right, enough. No more Blood Bowl. That was
Alright,
it.
don't worry. Get that Blood Bowl
Here's
out of here.
the-
Necromunda, more stuff coming out this week. We got the what are these bounty hunters, right?
No, they're like the water guild, so they're in charge of water.
All
They're in
right, the
charge.
Water Guild. They expanded it.
Yeah, they're the Brita Guild. If you want water that's not poison, you go talk to these men.
Yep. Or if you want poison water, they also same people.
They also they can get that. They can get that for you.
They provide that service as well. But yeah, and that's pretty much all. So it's not a
Some
huge release.
quick words about these. These are probably the coolest models for Necromunda, like hands down, in my opinion. Like these are so cool. I hope they're plastic because they're damn cool. I
I
am
think
instant
they
day one
are.
pre-order.
I think they are just because I'm looking at the tank on the back of the giant sort of Subnautican guy, and that seems unless it's a hollow chamber, which it could be, like it just seems like something they would do in plastic.
That's true. That's true.
I agree with you. These are cool looking models, but I think when these models first came out, I think we did agree that is this really Necromunda? Does this actually fit into the world of Necromunda? Seems a
The
bit too.
lady on the bottom left maybe is pushing it, but the dude and the Bioshock Subnautica guy, I would say fit a Necro.
Okay.
I think they're all pretty awesome. I mean, they definitely have. You wouldn't mistake them for something that's not from like sort of a sci-fi setting like this. They're they're super cool, and it's also an appropriate thing to just have a very small number of them. Like this is something that doesn't need to be.
A full
There don't need to
army.
be units of these. But yeah, it's super cool. Hoping those are gonna be plastic. I have a feeling they will be.
And that is all of the news. So we can go straight. Let's talk about the pre-order really fast before we get into their AOS experience, shall we? So it's still on sale, still up and running. No orders have run out.
I think the big question about this is this a success or not? So for the consumer, this is great. But did this work out? Like, did this not sell out instantaneously? And like, there's a very reasonable pre-order period that we're still in right now. Tomorrow it could end. But even if it did, even if it ended like in 5 minutes and they sold out in 5 minutes, that's still a way bigger window than there's ever been since sort of the pandemic went for these big boxes on pre-order. I was shocked that I was able to get not only the box but like the command token pre-order goodies as well. Um, but the question some people seem to pose to this is either Games Workshop did a good job making the queuing system and they made enough for the product, or the box was a flop. What do you guys think?
Box was obviously a flop, and they need to bring back fantasy because that would instantly sell out. Because
I agree with John on this one. Clearly, it failed because it didn't sell out.
but
Look at 40K starter set that sold out. Looks like that.
it sold out. That means Workshop is incompetent and is creating artificial FOMO. So you know, memes aside, I don't know. It's a good question. I think it ultimately dives down to numbers. Like if let's say they made. I'm okay. Disclaimer: I'm lowballing like really hard. But let's say they made 200 Indominuses. That's really lowballing. That's like saying the US GDP is like $5. you know. Um. So let's say they made 200 Indominuses and they sold out. Right. Great. Maybe not, or maybe not because they didn't make enough. But if they made 400, they could have made 500 Dominions and sold 300, which is more than Indominus, but they didn't sell out. So it's hard to tell in that sense. On the other hand, even if they did, let's say they did do that, right? You're still stuck with 200 Dominions sitting on warehouse shelves. Now the box is such a good deal, and the models are so cool that I think it's gonna once people start seeing it in stores, it's gonna start selling.
Yes,
Um,
if because I mean we know the stores also aren't getting very many copies of them each. Some trade accounts bought way more. I'm sure you guys have probably seen that widely circulated, doom and gloom Facebook post about some store that was like, I purchased 58 copies and like I got to sell them at half price because nobody bought them in the first day, and it's like, uh,
yes.
come on, man.
So was there? Because I assume you two bought it. Is that right?
Yes. Got two copies.
So you got two copies. So there wasn't a limit on how many you could buy.
It was two.
Two was the limit.
Two was the limit. Okay. All right. So I mean, so two people could buy it, or one person could buy two. Um.
Even that alone makes me think they made quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
Considering Kragnos and like the Slanesh twins, and a lot of those other things were limited to one per order. The fact that they made two of this meant that they were pretty comfortable. Like we have enough of these, because I mean I don't think it's. I would be shocked if this ended up being one of those things that just stayed on shelves forever. It just doesn't. It's not that kind of product. Particularly because I mean if if you've guessing how much it's worth, I think the quickie estimate is like one half of the box is probably worth the full price of the box, just the miniatures alone, if not more.
Hmm.
Like there's probably a good $500 worth of minis and book in here, if you were to guess what their multi kits would cost.
And it's a great in-game value. I believe each side is at least 1,000 points. I think the Stormcast side is like 1,300 points. That's a
Yeah,
lot
the
of minis.
Stormcast are 1,300, and the War Cleanser's like just something in the mid 900s, which is very very solid. You get a lot. It's a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
and the book. Like it's a good deal. And I think it was for me. It was incredibly refreshing that it didn't just like sell out instantaneously. Like I was first in line at my local store just because I was like I want to order it through my local store if I can, and took that. But I felt I was taking a risk by doing that. I was like, okay, this might be kind of stupid. Like I might be kicking myself for this later. Nope. It was possible to do that. That means it was also possible for people in local stores all over the planet to go in and pre-order from their places, and like it's a good thing. Um, it's a little soon because I also don't agree with the naysaying that like there's a lot of comments that are just like there's a lot of comments that are supportive, of course, but there's a lot of comments that are like, yeah, this is proof that nobody cares about AOS, man. Otherwise it would sell out in 5 minutes. It would also sell out in 5 minutes if they screwed up and didn't make enough boxes, right?
Well, I guess I have to believe the Twitch hosts when they said that we didn't need the word because they made a lot of boxes. That was one of their quotes.
Yep.
Yep.
Man, at the end of the day, like I did not see this outselling Indomitus because it's not 40K, and AOS
Mhm.
is definitely way bigger than it was, 6 years ago, and it's definitely way bigger than Fantasy ever was. Being a
Yeah,
player,
but it's a totally different brand. You're right.
not 40K.
Well, I mean, this not selling out is fine, right? Because the reason that I'm going to justify is it was limited to two per person. If what you guys said is true, so you're not having the scalpers going out and buying, I don't know, let's just say 20 of these boxes in one go, kind of deal. Though it wouldn't be hard for scalpers to continuously just make account after account and account to buy as many as they could.
Hmm.
But I mean, we had that factor, and we had the queue time. So people. I don't think the queue time played as much of as an effect on this, but it did slow people down. I mean, there was still queue time on Saturday evening when I tried to access the store.
Oh man, like I was like, it said 1 hour queue when I logged in at like 10, but it ended up being for like 15 minutes.
Hmm.
But that just means like there's a lot of people were, again, in comparison, the Gaunt's Ghost queue was like less than a minute for me, and this was predicted to be 1 hour, ended up being 15 minutes. So I think that did something. Um, Honestly, the biggest factor really is that it's not 40K. You know.
Right. It's not as popular as 40K, though. I mean, it's still a big release, and
Yes.
obviously, they learn from Indominus. They learn from Cursed City, right? That this is gonna be a hot deal. So obviously, they took a lot more precautions in when they released this.
I would also wager that they diverted resources from previous releases to make sure that this did not sell out in 5 minutes.
Right.
Like that's just this is their most important release of the year so far. So they have to make sure that it works.
Yep.
Well, it's a new system, and also you gotta get it right. Luckily, with AOS, they have their core rules on the for free on the website, so it's not like 40K where if you didn't get the box or the books, you're out of luck.
I like how the book sold out. That was kind of
Yeah, the box set with the novel.
the novel.
Yeah, I found that kind of weird. Did they not make enough books? Did they have to? Is that where the resources were cut?
Maybe.
That's they probably just didn't make very many of those books. Their hardbacks actually have been selling out a lot lately. This is the regular hardback books. That's been kind of a thing all year.
Oh, this is the novel. Is the novel hardback?
Yeah, it's hard.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it could just be underestimating the Darius Hinks fan base, but uh, yeah, I think Will's right. I think they have been selling a lot. I would always notice the books would sell out fairly quickly. Like the God's Ghost books sold out the day of.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Side note: whoever made the decision to make the General's Handbook like ring bind or bound like ring bound is needs a raise. That's a great idea.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that the way the 40K chapter approves have been for a while?
No. Uh, when Indominus came out, they had this same thing, General Handbook and Tournament Playbook. I don't remember what it's called. They had it like that, and then with the latest one they went back to
Because
normal books.
I got this little. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it's not a chapter approved, but I got like a. There
No,
was a
Matt,
little ring bound book that came out with ninth edition
no,
40K.
that's right. That one will that you got was ring bound, and then the next this year's chapter approved was not for some reason.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. The ring bound thing is very nice. It's also just cool that like if you're if you're somebody who just is interested in the match play stuff, you can get this thing and you're good to go. General's Handbook is you know even the very first one in like 2016 was one of the most important books that they had come up with in a really long time in terms of how much it affected the game, and then affected 40K later with the chapter approves following in the kind of same footstep.
Well, I hope
Um,
their War Scroll calculator is still in effect, so I don't have to buy this book. But we'll have to
they'll
wait and see.
update it, but the pitch battle stuff, they'll probably still. The ring bound design is designed to fold flat and save space. Thanks very much. Description on the website.
Yeah.
It does do that. Well, I know we're running a bit short on time here, so is there anything else we want to discuss about this before we get into the week?
I think that's it for me. That
Yeah, I
sense.
think we get to hear about how the play test went.
I did too. Also do a play test.
Oh,
Oh, very cool.
So, uh, if John doesn't mind, I'll just quickly go through mine.
yeah. Go ahead, man.
Um, so we played on the new table size. Then we did 1,000 points. So we did a smaller map. Uh, yeah, just like when 40K changed its map, I definitely felt the difference. Not being able to move too much, and I still had a fun time. Predatory spell, endless spells. I enjoy that change. That was much fun to have now that I didn't have to worry about my Blood Rack Viper losing control. Other than that, I mean, we still played with some of the 2.0 rules because we're still kind of getting into it, but I had a good time. Though I did have a couple questions, which I don't know if John would be able to answer. So
Oh,
command points. So, do you know how many command points do we get? Do we only get 2 command points?
yeah. So essentially, you get one. So first things first. You get a command point at the beginning of the round. So you don't get one at the beginning of your turn. You get the beginning of the round.
Right, right.
You get one for existing, one for your general, and then one if you go second. So yes, you generally get two plus the one if you go second.
So going second, you'll always get an additional one. It's not
Yes,
just the first turn.
that's correct.
Okay, so I didn't know that. All right. Um, what is there? Okay, so that answers that. Shooting phase. Are we still able to shoot in combat? Because I didn't see anything about that in the core book either.
And you could shoot into another melee. However, if you are like just like in 2.0, if you are engaged in melee, you can only shoot what you're fighting.
So I can still shoot into combat. I can
Correct.
shoot in combat and shoot into combat.
Correct.
Okay, because I remember
Um,
it saying like if you're within 3 inches of an enemy, you have to shoot them. Kind of
right.
deal.
And it seems kind of wow. Like for people who haven't played AOS, that seems kind of OP. But honestly, unless you're playing High Elves or Lumineth, it's not that bad.
Yeah, shooting is pretty different in this game
Yeah, unless you're
in
playing
terms of
Lumineth,
just
and you,
the magnitude, and then Lumineth. Yeah, but they
yeah,
can,
then you just play 40k.
right.
Another change that I enjoyed: objectives are now have a 6-inch bubble in order to control. I don't know if that's new. I've never saw it in 2.0, but I thought that was a welcome change.
I mean, you could speak from a 40k player because 40k is 3 inches, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so uh, it was good to see this in there because if I'm wrong, you can correct me. It used to be you had to touch the objective, right?
No, I think it was 3 inches,
Was it
which
three
is
inches in
yeah,
2.0?
I think it was three. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've never saw the rule because I never really read it too thoroughly, but my group was always under the impression that you had to be touching it.
Mm,
And then wizards, I see that they finally added a miscast rule.
yes, I actually missed that in our first game. Thankfully, we never double ones, but yes, get miscast now.
Only on double ones though, so no double sixes. You're still okay, but unmodified roll of a 2, you're taking D3 mortal wounds.
And the to me, I think that's the cute penalty. The real penalty is you can't cast anymore.
Yeah, if
Which,
you're able to cast any more spells, you're done.
yeah,
So
which is not as bad for like a baby wizard that can cast one, but if you have like a Nagash or Lord Croak and you get that miscast, you're like, well, that sucks.
there
There
goes
goes more
that.
points. You know.
But overall, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the new rules. I'll have to wait and see when, you know, the point adjustment hits, but I had a lot of fun. How about you? So how was your game? You have more
Bi-
experience, so expect more detail.
a big thing was the board size being different was really apparent. Like there was a turn one charge our game.
How many
Um,
points did you guys play?
1,000 points. It was I was playing my Stormcast versus Donnie's Iron Jaws, so it was fully painted. Because my undead's not fully painted, so like yeah, screw it. First game, let's just go ham. So yeah, being in combat early on was pretty new. And it seemed kind of like on paper it seems less tactical, but I think command abilities work really changed that. Um, so command abilities, like I said earlier, you get them at the beginning of the round. And there's a lot of command abilities you could use. Not just the ones on your card or in your war scroll, but one of the big ones was the rally command ability, and that one is in the hero phase. Pick a unit that's not in combat and roll dice for each slain model. On a 6, you get a model back. It represents your hero is like encouraging the injured fighters to stand back up and fight again. Um, so on one hand, that seems pretty strong. You can bring a unit back to life. But something that I should point out, and I asked the forums this question, and people agreed with me. You can use this at the enemy hero phase because it just says on the hero phase, and I think that was the biggest thing we were wrapping our head around. So was how much command abilities you could just use in the enemy turn. And while on one hand it's not alternate activation, it definitely creates that kind of dynamic where you gotta pay attention. Another important command ability was it's the one where if an enemy unit ends its move within 9 inches, you get to move d6 inches as long as you're not in combat, and that could get pretty powerful. Like I use that to hide. So I had some Gorguntas go into my line, and I used that to put my Knight and Cantor behind my Sequitur so she wouldn't get charged. Um, and next turn, Donnie used it to put his Mega Boss in a better position to charge me the next turn, and that definitely led to again more tactical decision making during your opponent's turn, not just like, oh, what am I gonna do next, but more like, what can I do now? I have these command points. Another one was the one where you get +1 to hit, either in shooting or during combat. That was pretty powerful because
All out attack.
yeah, all out attack, and the +1 to save one as well, because that one you use when the opponent declares, either when you declare a unit to attack for all out attack, or when your opponent attacks you, you can declare all out defense, which gives you +1 to your save. And again, really you had to pay attention. You had to think like, oh, is this worth using now? Do I want to save the and especially because you get command points per round
per
and
round.
get refreshed. So you really had to think, is this worth it right now? And that's on top of the command abilities on that you have on your war scrolls. Now that is one thing. If you look at Games Workshop, like even in 40K, the design space of just adding more stratagems, quote unquote, that to me, I wasn't a big fan of that. But I think for AOS, I made a little cheat sheet, and the fact that there isn't too many quote unquote stratagems kind of helps, and the fact that command abilities, are tied to your war scroll as well. So I mean, you have all these options, but it never felt overwhelming. Especially because you only have 2 to 3 CP to use a turn, and it's less of like remembering what I have that I could use, and more like, okay, I have these pretty decisive command abilities I could use. Where do I use them?
They're also not faction specific,
Yes,
so your opponent can learn them at the same time you're learning them too.
Yep.
Like it's something you both have access to. It's just how you make use of it and if you make use of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So I really like that. I just like that element of thinking and just having stuff to do during your opponent's turn. But again, it's not alternate activations, but it's getting there, and I think that's a step in the right direction. You have so much you could do during the opponent's turn, so I really like that. There was the Overwatch one, but we didn't really have a lot of range units, so we didn't get to use that. So for our listeners, there's a command ability when an enemy finishes, I think a charge within 9 inches. If you're not in melee, you get to shoot. um that can be pretty powerful as well, but again, it means you have to save that CP for something.
Yes,
uh
it's a lot of more playing smart with your CP than uh holding on to it and just spending it whenever you feel like, kind of deal. I'm glad they
yeah,
got rid of the pool system. Really.
yes, and they added a limit too. You can only use command abilities once per phase, and a unit can only benefit from one, I believe.
Yes.
So that was pretty cool. I like that. What else? Overall, I enjoyed the game.
I'm sure once we get more games in, we'll be able to, dissect it a bit more. Plus, it'll help
Yeah.
once we get the point systems and the removal of the battalions as well. But
Yeah. Yeah, not having battalions was I just picked the one where you get to do a one drop, and that can be pretty powerful because if you finish deploying first in match play, you get to decide who gets the first turn. So, you know,
really, I didn't see that
yeah.
part.
Well, it's match play only. I think it's in the General's Handbook, I believe, actually.
Hmm.
If you finish deploying first, you choose the first turn. It's the main advantage of having the basic battalion. So I think it's the one where it's like 1 HQ, 2 troops, and the benefit is you get to drop as one.
Right.
So there's that. But overall, it's pretty fun. It makes me excited to work more on my death so I could play more games with them, or play games with them. Period. That's really cool. I'm trying to think anything else I noticed. Yeah. Super fun. I love the changes. But again, we'll see as we keep playing the game to see like if they're worth it. If the changes are actually really good. I mean, on paper and in my first experience, I found them already better than 2.0. So I'm having a good time.
I agree. Though, again, my experience is more limited than John's. John's played AOS a lot longer than I have. But I think we'll call it there on the AOS stuff. We can go straight into hobbies and then call it there. So, Will, what's up with you?
Mostly just painting things that like I already own to get ready for 3.0. I am in the midst of painting, repairing, rebasing my Gloomspite Gits army. So a lot of those models happen to be like resin or like metal or stuff like that, or like they were things that I had like ended up not quite finishing. So I've basically been going back to my stuff and be like, okay, how can I make 1,000 points that's fully painted and based as quickly as possible? And like, you know, uh, Dominion isn't out for some time, so I've got some free time to kind of get those together. And it doesn't sound like a very fun task, but it's actually kind of cool. going back to like an old army that I've sort of hadn't been doing very much with, just because it's a good reminder too of like the progress I've made as like a painter and like as a hobbyist since then. Like I got rid of some of my gloom spite, and I'm kind of sad that I did. Like there's a few things that like I had never gotten around to painting that I was like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have given this away. Like maybe it would have been fun to paint it, but it's actually been quite enjoyable. Just I had forgotten how long rebasing actually takes. But yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Cool. What about you, John?
I just been working on some undead. Been painting some skeletons. Actually, something I just remembered from our game, which is really funny. So there was a point where gore grunted, which are like 5 wound models, ran away, and I was telling Don like, dude, if you had Kragnos, you wouldn't have ran away. +1 bravery. um, but memes aside, yeah, I had some friends, for a fee, build my zombie dragon and some zombies, because I don't know. I just didn't find it fun to build these undead. So like, I'll pay someone to do it for me. I mean, I'll paint them for sure myself. But yeah, I'm almost done with a block of 20 skeletons. I finished painting 6. I got to base them, and I'm painting 4 more. And once that's done, I got 10 zombies left and some var guys for fully painted 1,000 points of vampire counts. So that should be cool.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, very cool. I I got my Deepkin warband, so I've been putting that together, get Lord Crab up and running, get that in my
Nice.
army. And then this week I plan to paint some of my ghosts, and get them ready. I think I'll start 3.0 with the Night Haunt.
Nice.
Yeah, get the Ghost Boys going. And probably this weekend I'll probably get another 3.0 in as well. And come back with different results of what happens. Because I'm sure we'll have more players on that day.
Nice.
But that's the hope. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know what's gonna happen Wednesday, but definitely Saturday I'll be playing some more AOS. But I think this is a good point to call it here. So thanks to everyone who decided to hang out to the very end of this show. And catch everyone next time.
Let everyone.
See ya.
Until next time.